Story 1. I've been living in this apartment building on Maple Street for about 3 years now. It's a decent place, not too fancy, but the rent is affordable, and most of my neighbors are pretty nice. Well, most of them. My job as a paramedic means I work weird hours. Sometimes I'm on shift for 24 hours, then off for 48. It's exhausting work, especially in a busy city like ours, but I love helping people. The downside is that when I come home after a long shift, finding parking can be a nightmare. Our street has limited parking spaces. There's a fire hydrant right in front of our building, and of course, that section of the curb is painted bright red, a clear no parking zone for obvious safety reasons. I've always respected that, even when it meant I had to park 3 blocks away and trudge home after a grueling shift. About 2 months ago, a new tenant moved into the building. She drove a shiny black BMW that she treated like it was made of gold. From day one, she complained about the parking situation. I first met her in the lobby when I was getting my mail. She was arguing with the building manager. Building manager: "Ma'am, I understand parking can be difficult, but there's nothing I can do about the city's regulations." Woman: "This is ridiculous. I pay good money to live here. I shouldn't have to walk half a mile just to get to my apartment." Building manager: "I'm sorry, but those are city rules about fire hydrants. Everyone has to follow them." Woman: "Well, someone should do something about it. That hydrant takes up a perfectly good parking space." I remember rolling my eyes as I sorted through my bills. If she thought walking a few blocks was hard, she should try carrying equipment and running up flights of stairs to save lives all day. A week later, I noticed something strange on my way to work. The red curb by the fire hydrant looked different. In the early morning light, I could see that someone had painted over the red with gray paint that roughly matched the color of the concrete. It wasn't a professional job, you could still see traces of red peeking through, but it was clearly an attempt to disguise the no parking zone. I was running late for my shift, so I couldn't stop to report it, but I made a mental note to tell the building manager when I got back. By the time I returned home 24 hours later, guess what I saw? The black BMW parked right in front of the hydrant, where the curb had been painted gray. I took out my phone and snapped a few pictures, then went inside to talk to the building manager. Me: "Did you know someone painted over the red zone by the fire hydrant?" Building manager: "What? No, I didn't." "Are you sure?" Me: "Positive. And the new tenant with the BMW is already parking there." Building manager: "That's illegal. I'll report it to the city tomorrow." I showed him the pictures I'd taken. Building manager: "This is serious. Thanks for letting me know." The next day, I ran into my neighbor from across the hall. She's an older lady who's lived in the building for decades. "Neighbor, did you see what that BMW woman did to the curb? The nerve of some people." Me: "Yeah, I reported it to the building manager yesterday." Neighbor: "I called the city about it. They said they'd send someone out to inspect, but who knows when that will happen." Meanwhile, she's parked there like she owns the place. Me: "It's dangerous. If there's a fire, the firefighters need access to that hydrant." Neighbor: "Exactly. I've already talked to several other neighbors about it. We're all going to keep calling until something is done." Days turned into weeks, and somehow the woman kept parking in front of the hydrant. The city had apparently come out once to inspect, but she must have moved her car that day, and they didn't seem to notice the poorly painted curb. She'd get occasional tickets, but she'd just tear them up and keep parking there. Several of us in the building continued to call the city. My next-door neighbor, a retired firefighter himself, was particularly upset about it. Retired firefighter: "Do you know how many seconds count when we're trying to hook up to a hydrant during a fire? This isn't just entitled behavior, it's putting lives at risk." Me: "I know. I can't believe she hasn't been towed yet." Retired firefighter: "I've called the fire marshal's office twice now. They said they'd look into it." The woman seemed to know we were reporting her because she started giving us dirty looks in the hallway. Once, she confronted me by the mailboxes. Woman: "I know you're one of the people complaining about my parking. Mind your own business. Me? It is my business when you're blocking a fire hydrant. That affects everyone's safety in this building. Woman, that's not a real no parking zone anymore. The curb is gray. Me, you painting over a red curb doesn't make it legal. Woman, whatever. No one's going to do anything about it. She was wrong about that. Very wrong. It happened on a Tuesday night. I had just gotten home from my shift around 8 p.m. and was heating up some leftover pasta when I heard sirens, lots of them, getting closer. Then I smelled smoke. I rushed to my window and saw flames coming from the building next door. 3 fire trucks were already on the scene, with firefighters jumping out and assessing the situation. I grabbed my paramedic bag out of habit and ran downstairs to see if I could help. When I got outside, I saw a group of firefighters standing around the black BMW, which was still parked in front of the hydrant. The fire chief was shouting orders. "Fire chief, we need this hydrant now. Break the windows." Without hesitation, one of the firefighters took a large wrench and smashed the driver's side window of the BMW. Glass shattered everywhere. Then he broke the passenger window too. They threaded the large fire hose through the car, from one window to the other, and connected it to the hydrant. A crowd had gathered to watch the firefighters battle the blaze. I spotted the BMW woman pushing her way through, screaming when she saw what had happened to her precious car. "Woman, my car! What are you doing to my car?" "Fire chief, ma'am, you're parked in front of a fire hydrant that we need to access. This is standard procedure when a vehicle is blocking a hydrant during an emergency." "Woman, but this isn't a no parking zone. The curb is gray." "Fire chief, that's a painted over red zone, ma'am. You can't disguise a fire zone." "Woman, I'll sue you for this. You have no right." "Police officer, ma'am, step back and let the firefighters do their job. We can discuss your vehicle later." While the firefighters contained the fire next door, thankfully, no one was hurt. A police officer took statements from several neighbors who had gathered. I overheard snippets of conversations as people explained how the woman had painted over the red curb and had been parking there for weeks despite multiple reports. Even more satisfying was when a city inspector showed up, called in by the fire department. He examined the curb, scraping away some of the gray paint to reveal the red underneath. "City inspector, this is a clear violation of city code. Tampering with safety markings is a serious offense." By the time the fire was out, a tow truck had arrived. The firefighters disconnected their hose from the hydrant, leaving the BMW with 2 broken windows and a soaking wet interior from the water that had leaked from the hose. The woman was having a complete meltdown as they prepared to tow her car. "Woman, you can't tow my car. I live here." "Tow truck driver, I've got orders from the city." "Ma'am, your vehicle is being impounded for illegally parking in a fire zone and for tampering with city property." "Woman, this is ridiculous. I'll fight this." "Police officer, ma'am, you're being issued citations for illegally parking in a fire zone, tampering with city property, and creating a public safety hazard. The fines total $2,500, and you'll also be responsible for the cost of repainting the curb properly." "Woman, what? That's insane." "Police officer, you'll also need to pay for the towing and storage fees to get your vehicle back." "Woman, this is all your fault." She turned and pointed at me and several other neighbors who were watching. "Woman, you people reported me. You're all just jealous of my car." "Retired firefighter, no, we're just concerned citizens who understand why fire zones exist. They save lives." The building manager had come outside during the commotion and approached the woman. "Building manager, I've received complaints from virtually every tenant in the building about what you did to that curb. I've also been informed that tampering with fire safety equipment or zones is grounds for eviction under your lease agreement." "Woman, you can't evict me. I have rights." "Building manager, you'll be receiving formal notice tomorrow. You have 30 days to vacate the premises." The woman looked around at all of us neighbors she'd dismissed, authorities she'd disrespected, and safety regulations she'd violated. For once, she seemed to have nothing to say. as the tow truck pulled away with her damaged BMW. The city workers were already scraping off her gray paint job and preparing to repaint the curb bright red. My neighbor from across the hall stood beside me, watching. Neighbor, well, that's what happens when you mess with fire safety in a building full of people who care about each other. Me, yep, and apparently a building with at least one paramedic and one retired firefighter. 2 weeks later, the BMW woman moved out. She never made eye contact with any of us again as she carried her boxes to a rental moving truck. The curb by the fire hydrant is now a freshly painted, unmistakable bright red, and I still sometimes have to park 3 blocks away after a long shift. But you know what? I don't mind the walk at all. Story 2. Some background about me. I served in the Army for 8 years, with 3 tours in Afghanistan. My last tour didn't end well. Our convoy hit and wide, and I lost 2 of my closest friends. I made it back physically intact, but mentally, that was a different story. I was diagnosed with severe post-traumatic stress disorder, which made civilian life incredibly difficult. Panic attacks, nightmares, hypervigilance, you name it, I had it. After trying various treatments, my therapist suggested a service dog. That's how Max came into my life. He's a 2-year-old German Shepherd trained specifically to help veterans with PTSD. He can sense when I'm about to have a panic attack, creates a physical barrier between me and crowds, and wakes me up during nightmares. Max has been my lifeline for the past year. Last week, I needed to fly across the country for my sister's wedding. I hadn't flown since coming back from overseas, but with Max by my side, I felt ready to face it. I did everything by the book. I notified the airline about my service dog when booking the ticket, got all the necessary documentation from my doctor, and even called customer service the day before to confirm everything was set. When we arrived at the airport, check-in went smoothly. The staff was professional and respectful. They checked my documentation, gave Max a little pat after asking for permission, and directed us to our gate. I could feel the familiar anxiety building up in the crowded terminal, but Max stayed close, helping me stay grounded. We boarded early as part of the accommodation, settling into our seats in the middle row. Max curled up at my feet, completely within my foot space as he was trained to do. He was wearing his service vest clearly marked, "Service Dog Do Not Pet." Everything was fine until the rest of the passengers started boarding. I heard her before I saw her. Her. Excuse me, what is that doing on this plane?" I looked up to see a middle-aged woman pointing at Max while talking to a flight attendant. Flight attendant. "Ma'am, that's a service animal. He's allowed on board." Her. "I don't care what you call it. I'm allergic to dogs. You need to move it to another part of the plane." I tried to stay calm. Max sensed my tension and pressed his weight against my legs, a technique he uses to ground me. Flight attendant. "Ma'am, service animals are protected by federal law. If you have allergies, we can try to reseat you farther away." Her. "No, I booked this seat specifically. That dog needs to go." At this point, she stormed over to our row. Max didn't react, maintaining his perfect training. Her. "You need to get your dog off this plane. I have severe allergies, and I'll go into anaphylactic shock." Me. "I'm sorry about your allergies, but he's a registered service dog. He stays with me at all times." Her. "Service dog? Please? He looks perfectly fine to me. What's wrong with you that you need a dog? You're not blind." That's when things got uncomfortable. I didn't want to explain my PTSD to a complete stranger, especially not in front of a plane full of people. Me. "Not all disabilities are visible. He's medically necessary." Her. "I know a fake service dog when I see one. You're just one of those people who get fake vests online so you can take your pets everywhere. I'm allergic to fur and to PTSD fakers." The flight attendant returned with the lead flight attendant. Lead flight attendant. "What seems to be the problem?" Her. "This person is trying to bring a pet on board, and I'm severely allergic." I need you to remove the dog immediately. I took out my folder and handed over my documentation. Me. Here are my medical documentation and Max's service animal certification. Everything is in order. The lead flight attendant examined the papers. Lead flight attendant. These documents are all in order. The service animal is legally permitted to remain with his handler. Her. This is ridiculous. I'm a platinum member with this airline. I spend thousands of dollars flying with you people every year. Are you really choosing a dog over a loyal customer? Lead flight attendant. Ma'am, I understand your concern, but we must comply with federal disability laws. We can offer to move you to another seat away from the service animal. Her. I don't want another seat. I want that dog gone. Look at it, sitting there so smug. It's probably not even trained. As if on cue, Max remained perfectly still, his eyes focused on me, completely ignoring the commotion around him. By this point, other passengers were getting irritated by the delay. Passenger behind us. Lady, just sit somewhere else and let's get this plane moving. Another passenger. Some of us have connections to make. Her. All of you shut up. None of you understand severe allergies, or how these fake service dogs are gaming the system. She then turned back to me, finger pointing in my face. Her. What's wrong with you anyway? Too weak to fly without your emotional support pet? My tax dollars probably paid for that thing. Something in me snapped at that moment. Not in anger, but I decided she needed to understand. Me. I served 3 tours in Afghanistan. This thing is a highly trained service dog that helps me with PTSD from combat. I'd appreciate it if you'd stop making a scene and either move to another seat or take another flight. I hadn't meant to say it so loudly, but the cabin had gone quiet during her tirade. A few rows ahead, an older man stood up. He was wearing a Vietnam veteran cap. Vietnam veteran. Young man, thank you for your service. Ma'am, you should be ashamed of yourself. Her face turned even redder. Her. Oh, so now you're all ganging up on me. This is discrimination against people with allergies. I'll sue this entire airline. She started screaming at this point, jabbing her finger toward Max and me. Her. Get this fake dog and his fake disabled owner off this plane right now. I know my rights. The lead flight attendant had had enough. He gestured to 2 other crew members who had arrived. Lead flight attendant. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the aircraft. You're creating a disturbance and harassing another passenger. Her. What? You're kicking me off? Do you know who I am? I'll have all your jobs. She refused to move, so they had to call airport security. As they escorted her off, she continued screaming about lawsuits and allergies. The entire plane erupted in applause when she finally disappeared down the jetway. The lead flight attendant came back to check on me. Lead flight attendant. Sir, I apologize for that disturbance. Are you and your service animal okay? Me. We're fine, thank you. I appreciate your handling of the situation. He nodded and then addressed the cabin. Lead flight attendant. Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay. We'll be departing shortly, and just so everyone is aware, interfering with a service animal and their handler is against federal law. The rest of the flight was peaceful. Several passengers stopped by during the flight to express their support, and one flight attendant quietly told me that the woman had been placed on the airline's permanent no-fly list for harassment. When we landed, the pilot actually came out to shake my hand and thank me for my service. He was a former military pilot himself and understood what Max meant to me. I share this story not because I want sympathy or praise, but because I want people to understand that not all disabilities are visible. Service animals like Max aren't pets or emotional support animals, they're highly trained medical equipment that some of us need to function in everyday life. As for the woman, I later heard through a friend who works for the airline that she tried to file a complaint, which was promptly rejected. She also apparently attempted to bad-mouth the airline on social media, only to be met with overwhelming criticism when the real story came out. Max and I made it to my sister's wedding without any further incidents. He was the perfect service dog throughout the ceremony, and my family was grateful for how he helped me stay calm during what would have otherwise been an overwhelming event. I guess sometimes entitled people do get what they deserve. Story 3. I've lived in Maple Creek neighborhood for almost 15 years now. It's a nice suburban area where most people know each other, and Halloween is always a big deal around here. Houses decorated to the nines, themed parties, and of course, trick-or-treating for the kids. I've always loved Halloween, the excitement in the air, the costumes, and the community spirit. 3 years ago, I started a new tradition in our neighborhood. As a single parent working at the hospital, I sometimes got stuck with holiday shifts. My daughter was old enough to go trick-or-treating with friends, but I still felt bad not being there to hand out candy. So I installed a video doorbell and left a bowl of candy outside with a "please take one" sign when I couldn't be home. Many neighbors did the same thing when they had other commitments. I never thought much about candy going missing. Sure, some greedy kids might grab handfuls instead of one piece, but that's just part of the Halloween experience, right? But last year, something strange happened. When I checked my doorbell camera footage the day after Halloween, something I did just to see the cute costumes, I noticed a middle-aged woman, not with kids, approaching my porch around 7:30 p.m. She was wearing a black coat, no costume, and she didn't just take a handful of candy. She dumped my entire bowl into her oversized purse and walked away. I was annoyed, but figured it was a one-off thing. Maybe she had a party to go to and needed extra candy. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. Then a few days later, at our neighborhood social media group, my neighbor 2 doors down posted something interesting. Did anyone else catch this woman on their doorbell cam? She took all the candy from our unattended bowl and said something weird about testing for razor blades when my son asked what she was doing. I clicked on the video, and sure enough, it was the same woman who had emptied my bowl. In this footage, she was confronted by my neighbor's 10-year-old son who had come back to get more candy for himself and his friends. Kid, what are you doing with all that candy? Woman, I'm a concerned parent. I'm testing these for razor blades and drugs. You shouldn't be eating these without having them checked first. Kid, but that's our candy for the trick-or-treaters. Woman, don't question me. This is for everyone's safety. You should thank me. The video showed her walking away with their entire bowl while the confused kid just stood there. I was furious. Using child safety as an excuse to steal candy. Who does that? I commented on the post with my own experience, and within hours, 5 other neighbors had shared similar footage from their doorbell cameras. Same woman, same excuse when caught, same result: empty candy bowls. But the most disturbing video came from a family at the end of our street. Their 8-year-old daughter and friends had their bags snatched by this woman. The footage showed 3 little girls, a princess, a superhero, and a witch walking together when the same woman approached them. Woman, let me see your candy bag. Girls. Princess, why? My mom said not to talk to strangers. Woman, I'm with the neighborhood watch. There have been reports of dangerous items in the candy this year. I need to check all of it. Superhero, but we want our candy. Woman, this is for your own good. Hand them over now, or I'll call your parents and tell them you're being difficult about safety procedures. Looking scared and confused, the little girls handed over their bags. The woman walked away with 3 bags of candy that these kids had spent hours collecting. The mom who posted this was livid, and honestly, so was I. This wasn't just taking unattended candy, this was intimidating children and stealing directly from them. Our neighborhood was buzzing with anger. Who was this woman? Nobody seemed to know her, which was odd in our close-knit community. Did she even live here? I decided to do some investigating. I've always been detail-oriented, comes with being a nurse, and something about this woman's entitlement really got under my skin. Plus, she scared those little girls, and that crossed a line for me. I compiled all the videos from the neighborhood post and noticed a pattern. The woman always headed in the same direction after stealing candy. On a hunch, I drove around that area the next day and spotted her car. It had a distinctive bumper sticker that was visible in one of the videos where she was getting into her vehicle. The car was parked outside a house about 3 blocks from mine, just outside our immediate neighborhood, but still in the broader community. I didn't confront her. That seemed potentially dangerous, but I noted the address and brought everything to the local police station. The officer at the desk seemed unimpressed at first. "Officer, so you're reporting stolen Halloween candy?" "Me, I'm reporting theft from multiple homes, intimidation of children, and someone impersonating a safety official to steal from kids. I have video evidence from 7 different houses." I showed him the footage, especially the clip of her taking the bags from the little girls. His attitude changed immediately. "Officer, this is actually quite serious. The candy value alone might not be much, but pretending to be in an official capacity to take things from children could potentially fall under several charges." They took my statement and the video evidence. I didn't expect much to come from it, to be honest. I figured they'd maybe talk to her, and that would be the end of it. But a week later, I got a call from the police asking me to come in. When I arrived, I was surprised to find several other neighbors there too, including the mom of the little princess who had her bag taken. The detective explained that after investigating the woman, let's call her the candy inspector since you said not to use names, they discovered this wasn't a one-time thing. She had been doing this for years, not just in our neighborhood, but across 3 different communities in our city. "Detective, we executed a search warrant on her residence based on the evidence you all provided. You won't believe what we found." What they found was a spare bedroom filled with Halloween candy. Not just from this year based on the packaging of some items. She had been hoarding candy for at least 5 years. "Detective, we also found multiple disguises, fake ID badges she'd created for different neighborhood watches and parent associations, and detailed maps of various neighborhoods with routes marked for maximum candy collection." "Mom of Princess, is she mentally ill? Who does this?" "Detective, she's been evaluated, and no, there's no mental illness defense here. She's just entitled. She told officers she deserves the candy more than spoiled kids because she appreciates it more. She also sells a lot of it at a discount to coworkers after Halloween." The woman was being charged with multiple counts of theft, fraud for impersonating official positions, and additional charges for targeting children. The detective explained that normally Halloween candy theft would be a minor issue, but the systematic nature, the targeting of children, and the fraud aspects made it much more serious. "Detective, we're building a case, and we need statements from all affected households. Would you be willing to testify if this goes to court?" Every single one of us agreed. As we were leaving, the mom of the princess girl came up to me. "Mom of Princess, thank you for taking this so seriously. My daughter was afraid to go trick or treating again after what happened." "Me, no child should have their Halloween ruined by an entitled adult who thinks their wants are more important than kids' joy." The case moved surprisingly quickly. The candy inspector was offered a plea deal but refused it, insisting she was providing a community service by testing the candy. The judge didn't buy it for a second. She was ultimately convicted of multiple misdemeanor theft charges, fraud, and endangering the welfare of children. The judge, who apparently loved Halloween himself, seemed particularly offended by her actions. "Judge, Halloween is a community celebration, particularly for children. Your actions show a disturbing level of entitlement and disregard for others, especially vulnerable children who you frightened and stole from. This court takes that very seriously." She got 90 days in county jail, 200 hours of community service specifically assigned to help with legitimate community holiday events, restitution to all the families, and 3 years of probation during which she was banned from participating in Halloween in any capacity, no handing out candy, no decorating her house, and a probation officer would check on her each Halloween to ensure compliance. The best part? After the case wrapped up, our neighborhood organized the biggest Halloween festival ever seen in our community. We had games, a haunted house, and more candy than any kid could dream of. The 3 little girls who had their bags stolen were given special Halloween hero capes and got to lead the costume parade. As for me, I still leave a bowl out when I have to work on Halloween. But now we have a neighborhood watch, a real one, where we take turns driving around to keep an eye on things. Not because we're worried about razor blades and candy, which has always been more urban legend than reality, but because we learned that sometimes the real thing to watch out for is entitled adults who think the world owes them something, even if it's just a child's Halloween candy. And every year, I make sure to add extra full-sized candy bars to my bowl, just to make up for the ones that were stolen. Because at the end of the day, Halloween isn't about the candy, it's about community, joy, and making sure kids get to be kids, without entitled adults ruining the fun. Story 4. It all started with the magnificent oak tree that stood on the edge of our property. This wasn't just any tree, it was a 150-year-old heritage oak that my great-grandfather had planted when he first bought this land. Growing up, that oak was my sanctuary. As a kid with severe anxiety, I found peace sitting beneath its sprawling branches, watching the sunlight filter through the leaves. When my parents passed away 5 years ago, leaving me the family home, that tree became even more precious, a living connection to my ancestors. I worked from home as a software developer, and my office window faced that grand oak. Every morning, I'd sip my coffee and watch squirrels chase each other around its trunk. My spouse and I had plans to build a treehouse in it someday for our future children. The problems began last year when a new neighbor moved in next door. From day one, she made it clear that she didn't like that ugly tree blocking her view of the mountains. I tried to be polite, explaining that the oak was a protected species in our county and had historical significance. "Neighbor, that monstrosity is ruining my property value. Do you know how much I paid for this house? I deserve a clear view." "Me, I understand you want a nice view, but this tree has been here for generations. It's legally protected, and it's completely on my property." "Neighbor, well, it drops leaves in my yard, and I shouldn't have to clean up your mess." I even offered to help rake leaves in the fall, but nothing satisfied her. She complained about everything: the squirrels, the birds, the shade it cast on her garden. I installed a fence along our property line, hoping it would help establish boundaries, but that only seemed to make her angrier. Last month, my spouse and I planned our first vacation in years, a 2-week trip to visit my in-laws across the country. We were excited but nervous about leaving our home unattended for so long. I asked my cousin to check on things periodically and installed security cameras connected to my phone. 3 days into our vacation, while scrolling through social media in my in-laws' living room, my phone pinged with a motion alert from our home security system. I tapped on the notification, expecting to see a delivery person or maybe my cousin. Instead, what I saw made my heart stop. There was a truck parked in front of my house with "quick-cut landscaping" painted on the side. 2 men were on my property with chainsaws, and my neighbor was standing there, pointing at my oak tree. I turned up the volume just in time to hear her say, "Neighbor, I don't care what the property line is. That tree is a nuisance, and I've paid you good money to take care of it today. The owners are gone for another week and a half. Nobody will know it was you. Landscaper, lady, if this tree is protected like you mentioned, we could get in serious trouble. Neighbor, I'll take full responsibility. Just cut it down now." I watched in horror as they began cutting into the massive trunk of my family's oak. With shaking hands, I called the police in my hometown and explained the situation. Then I called my cousin, who lived just 10 minutes away. The next half hour was the longest of my life. I watched through the security camera as they kept cutting, the chainsaw eating deeper into the trunk of my beloved tree. My spouse held my hand as tears streamed down my face. Just as they were about to make the final cut that would send the oak crashing down, a police cruiser pulled into our driveway, followed closely by my cousin's car. The landscapers immediately stopped what they were doing. The police officer approached them, and though I couldn't hear everything, I could see my neighbor becoming increasingly agitated. waving her arms and pointing at the tree. "Neighbor, this is ridiculous. It's just a tree. I paid these men to do a job." "Officer, ma'am, you've authorized the destruction of a protected heritage tree on someone else's property. That's criminal damage and trespassing." "Neighbor, it drops leaves in my yard. I have rights too." My cousin called me right after, still standing in our yard as the police handcuffed my neighbor. "Cousin, they've arrested her. The officer says this is a serious offense. The heritage oaks are protected by both county ordinance and state law. The landscapers are cooperating, saying she told them the tree was on her property and that she had permits." I felt a mix of relief and devastation. The oak was severely damaged but might survive with proper arborist care. We cut our vacation short and flew home the next day. When we arrived, the sight of my wounded oak brought me to tears. Nearly a third of the trunk had been cut through, and the tree was now supported by temporary braces an emergency arborist team had installed. Yellow police tape surrounded the area. The legal process moved surprisingly quickly. The district attorney charged my neighbor with criminal damage to protected property, trespassing, and filing false statements. She had forged documents claiming ownership of the tree. The landscapers, who had been misled, became witnesses for the prosecution after providing text and payment records. 2 weeks later, I sat across from her in a mediator's office before the criminal case proceeded. She looked nothing like the confident woman who had ordered my tree cut down. Her designer clothes had been replaced with a simple blouse and pants, and her face showed the strain of recent events. "Mediator, before we proceed further with criminal charges, the property owner has agreed to discuss a potential civil settlement." "Neighbor, I don't understand why everyone's making such a fuss. It's just a tree." That just a tree has been in my family for 5 generations. It's protected by law because it's a rare old-growth heritage oak. The arborist says it will take years to heal, if it survives at all." "Neighbor, well, I didn't know all that." "Yes, you did. I told you multiple times, and it's clearly marked with a heritage tag. You waited until we were on vacation and hired people under false pretenses." The mediator presented the arborist's assessment of damages: $89,000 for emergency intervention and ongoing care, plus an estimated $150,000 in property value reduction if the tree didn't survive. "Neighbor, this is insane. I don't have that kind of money." Mediator, the alternative is to proceed with the criminal case, which could result in fines up to $250,000 plus potential jail time, given the protected status of the tree and the premeditated nature of the act. I watched as the reality sank in. For months, she treated me like I was unreasonable for wanting to preserve my heritage oak. Now she was facing the consequences of her entitlement. "Neighbor, can't we work something out? I made a mistake." A mistake is accidentally cutting a branch that hangs over your property. You tried to destroy my family tree while I was out of town. In the end, we settled. She agreed to pay for all arborist care $89,000, plus $50,000 in damages, and would cover the full assessed value if the tree died within 5 years. She also had to complete 200 hours of community service with the county's Heritage Tree Conservation Program and issue a public apology. The criminal charges were reduced but remained on her record. 3 months later, I sit in my home office, looking at my oak. It's bandaged and braced, but the arborist is cautiously optimistic. New leaves have sprouted on the unharmed branches, a sign of resilience. My neighbor's house has a "for sale" sign out front. I heard she's moving to a condo in the city, where she won't have to deal with trees dropping leaves in her yard. Sometimes in the evening, I still sit under the undamaged side of the oak, like I did as a child. The peace it brings me hasn't changed. What has changed is my understanding of how far some people will go to get what they want, regardless of law, history, or common decency. The oak stands as a testament to survival damaged, but still standing, still growing, still mine. And now, with the settlement money, I'm establishing a trust for the ongoing care of not just my oak, but all the heritage trees in our neighborhood. My great-grandfather's legacy will live on, despite the best efforts of one entitled neighbor who thought her view was more important than 150 years of history.